This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
All right, everybody. Hey, and welcome to another episode of The Express, and I appreciate it for everybody out there joining us on this wonderful Tuesday evening. I have a great guest for us tonight. She'll be joining us in just a little bit. She's been on stage earlier this evening. Liz Miele. She's a stand-up comic producer and director and writer, and you name it, she's done it. But she'll be joining us in just a little tiny bit. I just want to remind everybody that if you want to keep up with me, you can go on Facebook to Gary Allen, A-L-A-N. Also, if you want to listen to any of my shows, like tonight's show, say in a couple of days or so, you can go to youtube.com for Gary Allen, The Express Interviews. This show will repeat itself on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com. And progressivevoices.com is also a place where you can check us out. That's where this show goes also towards the end of the week. And tunein.com. If you're into TuneIn and you've already used TMV Cafe as your favorite place to listen to the shows, you can listen to every show here on the network. And you can just click in there, push on TMV Cafe, one of your favorites, and we'll be ready to, excuse me, rock and roll as it. The last live show until I get back from, I'm moving to a different part of Florida, and I will be back in the middle of October. Now, the shows that you will be hearing are some of the best ofs as we get rolling along. But I just want to assure you we got some great shows lined up until the end of the year, and we got some great shows going into next year. My guest has joined us as she has done her set for tonight, Liz Miele, who is a writer, producer, comedian, world traveler. She's got enough stickers on her suitcase to name every country in the world she's been to. For a while, I thought she was Secretary of State. And she's one of the funniest ladies in the world, and she's one of the prettiest young comedians I've seen in a very long time, and she knows how to handle a heckler or two. Liz, welcome to The Express, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Oh, as someone once said, I love to be had. So how was your set tonight?
It was fine. It was like one of those ones where like I'm just working out new material, so I have a lot of new stuff from all my travels, and I'm just seeing what's hitting and what's not. So some did not.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't understand that, and every comedian does this because it's the place in which to do it. And when I was doing stand-up, which I wasn't extremely very good, just ask Rick Overton, he'll tell you how bad I was. People don't understand that a lot of comedians, like my mentor when I was in Los Angeles, I mean, you had George Carlin, which we're going to get to a little bit later on, but Robin Williams was like a mentor to me as he was for an awful lot of young comedians. People don't understand that you're not always going to see the comics A material Monday through Friday. Sometimes they're trying out new things, and and it may take a year before the setup gets to the end and even finds the middle, and we're going to get to that, how you come about your different things. But the question I really want to ask you before we get into some of the particulars of your life, your younger life, is, was comedy always something you thought you were going to do as a child, or did this just kind of happenstance in your life somewhere along the line?
Well, my parents are veterinarians, so the first thing I thought I was going to be was a vet, because my mom was a cat specialist, and I loved cats and I loved animals. And then somewhere like I don't know, 11, 12-ish, I knew I wanted to be funny, but I didn't, I thought I wanted to be like Sandra Bullock, pratfalls and whatever. But I knew there was some kind of disconnect. Like, being a funny actress was the thing I started to think about, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted. It was just kind of a means to having attention and people think I was funny. And then when I discovered stand-up at 13, I knew right away that it was like, no, this is what I want. This is exactly what I want. And so from 13 until I started when I was 16, and then forever afterwards, that was what I did. So I started writing when I was 14. I got on stage for the first time when I was 16, and then I haven't stopped.
The first time you got on stage, was it like the way it is for most of us? deer looking at the headlights of a Mack truck coming at you?
I did all right. I'm not a very energetic comedian now, but I didn't know that about myself when I first started. So it was me kind of trying to just mimic comics I've seen before, and they did act outs and they moved, but I was very awkward about it. So my writing was actually not too bad, but my stage presence, of course, was abysmal. So I did all right. Like, I got laughs, and that was really,
yeah.
I read enough. This is before podcasts and all this other stuff, but I read every how-to book. I read every, biography and memoir from comedians, and I knew enough to know that just because I wasn't good first time didn't mean I couldn't get better. So the fact that I got any laughs, I knew was like a victory.
Yeah, I grew up with an uncle who was way before your time, and you've probably never heard of him, but he was a comedian's comedian. His name was Tubby Boots, and he was on Miami Beach most of his career. Some of the older comedians, like a Gary Shandling, God rest his soul, and I was so happy to see a tribute to him the other night in the Emmys, as well as Rick Overton and others, and Jerry Seinfeld. They all knew who Tubby was. But I remember the first time I got on stage, and I got off stage, and the club owner said, "Well, your jokes sucked, but you have great stage presence." And so I said, "Okay, does that?" He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you a couple of slots during the week. You'll be at the end of the night, it'll be you and two drunks, but it'll give you a chance to work out some stuff." And I used to do a lot of voice impressions, and I still do. That's how I made my money in L.A. anyway, doing cartoon voices. And and I learned, but I overcame a fear because I had stage fright. Oh my God, it was like I didn't know if I could get on stage, and I thought I was the only one in the whole world until I heard other comics say, "Are you kidding me? I want to throw up before I even get on stage." Some nights,
Yeah.
it's just that way. Let's go back to an article, and I told you we were going to talk about this because it talks about you in your early years. An interview you did in Psychology Today back in 2015, which I found an absolutely fabulous interview, a great insight into you. We're talking to Liz Miele. She's a comedian and a writer and a producer, and an absolutely fabulous and very attractive, too. I must tell you, I'm old enough to be your daddy, but you are an extremely attractive woman, and how come some young man in New York hasn't picked you up and swept you off your feet is beyond me. There's got to be idiots in New York. But
just get to know me better. I'll explain it.
Yeah, but I love it. I love it. Folks, you got to go on Liz's website, lizmiele.com, and I think it's there, and where you cut off this heckler that I still love. I really do. I called Will Schreiner on it, and I told Will to go look at it, and he did, and he laughed his butt off. He said, "Yeah, that's the way you got to deal with it." Go ahead.
Oh no, I think it's funny that's the thing that you love is that I cut down this dude.
Oh yeah. I love your stuff anyway. I love your stuff anyway,
No, I appreciate it. It's just so funny to me because it's one of those things where that's a bad night for me and not something I look forward to, but it's so funny how often people are like, "That was great." And you're like, "I was pissed, legitimately. I had jokes I wanted to do, and then I had to go tell this guy to,
Yeah,
expletive here and there."
Oh, yeah. But the way you handled it was beautiful. It was just fabulous. As you said, you grew up with a mom and a dad who were veterinarians, and I have two kitty cats myself. And Furball I adopted in Las Vegas. He's a show business cat. He sings, he dances. His agents give him more work than they do for me. And I have Princess, who I love and adore, and she has the name because that's what she thinks of herself. But at an early age, you were kind of told by your parents and probably your siblings, your brothers and sisters too, to kind of calm it down. Don't be so don't speak too much out loud. Just kind of keep it to yourself. Don't draw attention to yourself, which is what my mother used to tell me on the radio. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't be controversial. And I kept trying to say to her, but Mom, that's the gig. That's the whole thing. You got to be a little controversial. You got to have an edge. Do you think that quashing your personality back in those days is one of the reasons why you have the style you do now on stage?
Very much so. I think this kind of, when I first started writing, I was I didn't think I had an opinion. I just thought I was mystified that people had such strong opinions on things, and I was curious about how I ever was going to have an opinion, only to realize, like, I felt the same way about feelings. Like, why does everybody feel so strongly about things, where every emotion I had was so suppressed that even now as a 31-year-old, I'm still learning that I shut down very quickly and very excessively, and that my feelings, I have like almost two modes, where it's either this guttural feeling where it just comes out without me even acknowledging it, and I have to then, pace it back, or I have this inability to access how I actually feel about something because it's so suppressed. So only through like writing and therapy and understanding it have I learned to kind of be in touch of who I am. And I think because I've had to do so much searching, it's made me understand myself at a level that I know how to connect with people and understand what I'm saying at a deeper level than maybe if I had already had an accessibility to these feelings.
And what even complicated matters more is the fact that you suffer from the same thing that I do, Jay Leno, and a producer that probably you don't remember, but Stephen J. Canale, who produced all those TV shows back in the 70s and 80s. We all suffer from dyslexia.
Yes.
And in my case, they didn't discover until my last year of high school. And all along, I kept thinking I was a dummy until some teacher came in one day and said, Gary's not stupid when it comes to math. I get it when it comes to math more than I do English or grammar, but I get it in math more than anything. And she said, Gary's not stupid, but I just can't figure this out. They gave me a quick test, and bada bing, they figured it out. Well, no wonder he's doing what he's doing. He's inverting numbers. He's not seeing things the way that you and I see them. And that kind of made me get a little more reassurance in myself, a little more self-belief within myself. Do you think that also had something to do with it too? That you're thinking to yourself, wow, what's wrong with me? How come I can't compete with my friends and siblings?
Well, it's interesting because I couldn't read until the third grade. I got diagnosed very quickly afterwards. But even with the label, I didn't actually understand it. I just knew that, all my other friends had one reading group, and I had to go with the other reading group. And what's interesting about it is, it might be different in school systems now, but when I was growing up, it wasn't just all the dyslexic kids had like a special reading group. It was the dyslexic kids, any other learning disability, any other handicap, any misfit. So, I wanted to learn. It was just difficult for me. But, some kid that had ADHD or some kid that, had behavioral issues is setting fire in the corner and is distracting me, and I'm already having issues learning. And it was like, all of a sudden I'm like, why? Everyone over here has something in common, but everybody over here has, the only thing they have in common is that they're not in the other group. And it kind of sends this message that I was different and that I wasn't capable of what other people were capable of. And I spent most of my life, even after knowing that it was dyslexia, still thinking I was dumb. And I read a lot. I still read a lot. I'm a slow reader and I'm not a good reader, but I digest more when I'm visual and reading it. But I read more than most of my friends that don't have difficulty with it. And even that, and even knowing a lot, I still thought I was dumb. I actually did not start to think of myself as an intelligent person until I read this book called The Dyslexic Advantage about 5 years ago. And that really broke down all the issues I've had with writing, reading, math, memory, even just how my brain works in general. And it made me start to understand not only what my difficulties were, but for the first time ever, what the pros were. Like what were the things that I was doing that most people can't do that I didn't even notice other people had a hard time doing. So like, I'm really good at divergent thinking. Like, you have a problem, I can give you 15 solutions, and it doesn't take any effort to me. But somebody that isn't dyslexic, it's just not where their brain goes. And a lot of these dyslexic qualities are, I think, the reason my stand-up stands out, because I look at the same picture everybody else does and come to different conclusions. And I've always been like that. Yeah. But now it's an asset because comedy is about having a unique perspective.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people who over the years that are dyslexic, and even Jay, and I've known Jay for a long time, and he loves to read. I love to read. I'm like you. I'm a slow reader. I read about a chapter and a half, and I'm ready to go to sleep. But I also think it's sort of like, when you have a disability, say you're blind, but your other senses kick in and you're able to overcome the blindness by your other senses taking over. And I think that happens with dyslexia. It gives you a twist on life that other people don't see. And in certain career goals, that gives you an advantage over somebody else who doesn't suffer from dyslexia. I have a drive within me that, like when I was doing the research on you, I love it. I love doing the research. I love finding out about people. And I know other talk show hosts that basically just go through the ABCs and that's the end of it. No, I like to delve in and find out what makes Liz tick. What's the whole thing? There was also something else, Liz. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I've noticed that I'm a researcher. I love, like, if somebody told me, I suffer from, migraines, a part of me is like, well, why? And they might be like, I don't know, I just take this medicine. And I want to do all the research to find out why and see if I can find different solutions and studies. Like, I don't know what that is, but that definitely feels like a dyslexic trait of digging deeper and wanting to know all the layers of something.
Yeah, I agree with you. In the interview, you also said that you like to connect with people in a way that is supportive and nurturing, rather than critical and damaging. Is that what is? And in the times that we live, how do you do that? I mean, you live in a city where people just as soon walk over you as to help you. But do you think that stems from you growing up and your mom and dad being vets and the care and the kindness and the how they treated animals, that you pass that on to human beings?
My parents, like my dad is a very give the shirt off your back kind of person. Mm-hmm. And my mom, maybe not that kind of generous, but a different kind of, my parents are just really wholeheartedly kind people. So I always grew up with that being a way to connect with people, buying dinner for people, cooking for people, helping them move. I've helped everybody I know move.
Oh, good. You can come down October 1st, this next Saturday. I'm moving myself.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, I got my car ready. I got you. So it's just one of those things that's kind of just how I was raised to kind of show love, is to kind of be of service. Right. And I don't know, when you do something like this and it takes you so long to kind of make a name for yourself, you don't really feel like you have value. Like all my friends, when they were 25, were out of college and got their first jobs and made decent money, and I was still scrounging for rent and, was a nobody in the field. And, I didn't feel like I had much to offer, but I could always, give somebody a little bit of advice about how I got to where I was in comedy, or I could always listen to somebody's set and give, a little bit of feedback. I could always encourage somebody. I could always tell them my experiences to help them understand their own. There was little things that weren't valued in money, but were valued in time and expertise that I could kind of give back. And so I've kind of learned, especially now, I still don't have a lot of money or much to give, but there's stuff that people hold more valuable now with everybody's life being so busy and, nobody really actually connecting, that making time for people, I've noticed more than anything, is the thing that has a resounding effect on people.
I think that some of the best gifts I've ever gotten, and I don't know about you and our listening audience, we're talking to Liz, and we're comedian, actor, writer, producer. Liz, are the gifts that are given, that are made, they made them, that it come from the heart, or something along those lines, instead of going to a store and buying something. We're talking to Liz Miele, and we're talking about her life as a comedian, and we're going to get to her world tour and everything else in just a couple of minutes. One of the things that I really, really wanted to touch on, you talk about getting the right kind of attention. And also I want to revert back just for a quick second, because you were talking about how sometimes you can just kind of fade into the woodwork, and yet you're in a profession where you want all the attention in the world.
What's the question?
There's the Liz that I know. There she is. No, you were talking about the fact that, sometimes you can become very silent and and not really say a lot, and you kind of blend into the woodwork. And I'm saying, and yet you're in a profession where you're dying for attention. Someone asked Sir Laurence Olivier once, "Why are you an actor?" And he got up from where he was sitting and he went over to the interviewer and he just looked at him directly and he just said, "Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me." And sometimes I think the shyest people in the world are the ones that end up being in show business, because in reality, we want the attention. We want to be loved. We want people to love us. We want to love people. And maybe as kids growing up, we were stifled from having to show that love like you were as a child. I was too. Don't say anything. Don't make any waves, And I think as you grow older and you get in this business, you realize, no, you got to make waves to get anywhere you want to be, and you have a right to say what you want to. Do you think, because you're talking about the right kind of attention, what is the right kind of attention for you that you need?
Well, that's interesting, because I definitely think what got me into it isn't the thing that's kept me staying in it. And so definitely attention. But I've always been very specific about the attention I want. I want to be seen as funny. I mean, I'm a woman. I could have gotten attention with sex. I could have gotten attention with, other ways that I look. I could have gotten attention with being just loud and obnoxious. I could have gotten attention by being, well-read. I could have gotten attention by, whatever. There's all these different ways that you as a kid or a woman can get attention. And I don't value any of them other than people finding me funny. And so I put all my eggs in that basket, and that positive, you're hilarious attention is what kind of has kept me, going. So with that, I don't need it all the time, and I don't need it from every person, and I only need it when I think it's appropriate. So for me, a lot of observation goes into my jokes and to understanding myself, and I'm very much an introvert. So while I'm able to be open and loud and draw attention, I also need a lot of time to be quiet and reserved and shut down. And so I'm not to go at a bar and be loud and, cause a ruckus. I let my friends do that. That's not who I am. That's not how I want people to know who I am. So if it's any kind of attention outside of this very specific, I want people to find me funny, I don't need to do it or be around it. So I think that's really what I mean when I kind of say I can kind of melt away and just be an observer is, it's the same way that, like, if you're an athlete and you have all this attention from being a good swimmer, you don't need to be swimming 24/7. You have your place where you do it, and then everything else is just the rest of your life.
Yeah. And you want to know, you were an athlete, you were a gymnast up until the age of 13.
I was.
Yeah, and I'm giving you a compliment, and I'm not trying to be a male chauvinist, but I mean, you have an incredible body for a woman of 31 years of age, and I suppose the gymnastics were part of it. Plus, you're also a marathon runner. You like to run. You do the Marine Corps thing every year for their marathon, and so you stay in shape, which is important to be on stage all the way around. But do you also think that other comedians and actors in general, and I know I am, and I'm none of that. I'm just a talking head behind a microphone, but I love to watch people. I like to observe. I like to watch interaction. I love to watch people do things besides making a fool out of myself every day. But do you think that that's also part of what helps you be who you are too?
I definitely like observing. I mean, I think my brain is constantly surveilling, and I've definitely taken something that was something always interesting in me, and I made it into this sharp-tuned tool that anything that I find, anything I hear that's weird, anything that I see that's weird, I'm constantly being like, oh, that's weird, why? Oh, what's this? That's interesting. Like, I'm always kind of collecting data, and then even if I don't do anything with it right away, it's something that's always kind of mulling around in my head, and I think that's just something I innately just enjoy. I enjoy observing how – I think I spent most of my life not knowing what was the right thing to do because I was kind of suppressed. I wasn't sure how to dress. I wasn't sure how to talk to people. I wasn't sure how to socialize. I wasn't sure what was interesting about me. So I always would – I would look at other women and be like, okay, they're kind of short and stocky. That looks good on them. Maybe it'll look good on me. Or, oh, that person's getting a lot of attention from those people. Maybe it's because of what they're talking about. And so I kind of, almost like a robot collecting data to kind of seem more human, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who do I want to be when I grow up and what feels comfortable to me. And I think I'm still kind of in that mode, even though I feel clearly much more myself and much more comfortable.
We're talking to Liz Miele. If you want to find out a little bit more about her, go to Liz Miele. That's MIELE.com. And you can also, I guess your album is out, your new one, Emotionally Exhausting, which I love the title. Where did that come from?
It came from a joke I do, and the joke came from I had an animated web series, and I had a couple of young animators work for me, and I thought I was being a great boss, and I got in a fight with one of them where he told me I was emotionally exhausting, and it was probably one of the most hurtful things anyone has ever told me. But it also made me realize that a lot of people feel that way, and it turned into a joke about why I was single, and it's funny. I mean, I've definitely grown. That joke and that conversation is, God, it's like 3-4 years old, and I feel like a completely different person. But there are bits of me that are quite emotionally exhausting.
You can get it on iTunes and Amazon. And is it anywhere else that they can download it or anything?
Yeah, it's on like Google Play and cdbaby.com, and then you can actually just listen to it on Spotify or Pandora. It's pretty available on the interwebs.
You are one of 5 children. I know you do an act with your one sister. How's that coming along?
We used to have, she moved to LA about a year ago, but before she lived in Brooklyn as well, and we used to have a monthly variety show called the Miele Sisters Variety Show. She's a jazz singer and singer-songwriter, so we would host the show together. It would be like comedians and musicians and magicians, and then her and her band would close every show. So we did it for 2 years. I absolutely loved it, and she is so funny and talented. I mean, she's way more talented than I am. So I started it as like a sounding board for her to just make new fans and get stronger and kind of fix some of her, almost like the way I do shows to fix my jokes. I wanted her to test out her songs, and it was just really good. I miss her. She lives in LA now, and I don't see her as often, and it was nice having this thing we did together every month.
Well, if she's anything like most of the people in LA, I spent 8-9 years there, and when I got out, I was like, oh yeah, thank God. You know, I like living in the West, but LA is just a little bit much. I mean, I have a nephew who's out there, Scotty, who's been out there forever. He was the original voice of Aladdin, and he's also on Full House and Fuller House and all that other crazy. Saget and I are old friends from our days at the Groundlings, and that's how we kind of got in there. Let's talk a little bit about your world in comedy, or the world of comedy in a sense. Is it easier today for female comics than it was, and you wouldn't know 30 years ago, but I'm sure you've met a lot of comedians who are older than you. Is it easier for a female comic today coming up as compared to what it was 25, 30 years ago?
It's been easier for 2 years. That's my exact answer. I think it's still really difficult. I think we're in vogue right now. And I think it's getting easier. And I think there's a lot of really, I think there's so many brilliant female comics that you will never hear of because we just don't have the same slots or clout that men have had the whole time. But it's opening up more. You see more women on late night. I mean, up until 2 years ago, you only saw 1 out of 10 women on late night, and it was usually somebody you already knew. And it was already kind of established. It was much harder for female women to break, and then even after they did break, for them to do stuff with it. And I think as, you know, the Wanda Sykes and the Amy Schumers and, you know, the Nikki Glazers and Rachel Feinsteins and as, you know, Broad City and all these TV shows and, you know, Chelsea Handler, like these people that are kind of having their own shows, showing that there is a market for it because it's all about money. They could give a crap if you're female or not. It's about who's going to watch it and who's going to make us money. But as we start to prove that people want to spend money on us and people want to hear us, more opportunities are open. So I think in the last 2 years, I've seen more desire to see women's voices and women audience members putting, you know, the support behind us as well. and showing that, and basically saying, if you want to see us on TV, then you have to support us.
Right.
And show that we're worth the money.
I had Chris DePetta on the show not long ago, and I know you know who Chris is. He's the owner, of course, of comedy clubs throughout the country, and he's also a good friend of mine. He's also Billy Gardell's agent. We were talking about that, and he said the problem used to be that it was strictly a man's world. You know, the owners of the clubs were men, the managers were men, the MCs were men, and women just got the end of the line, and it isn't that way anymore. And he said, thank God. He said, there's a lot of great talent out there. I mean, back when I started, there was very few female comics, and the ones that were again far and few. It was mostly men. When I went to L.A. and I was emceeing at the Improv, it was the same thing. Very few ladies got up on stage. They were more comedic actors than they were stand-up comics, and I think it's great. I love your work. I mean, as much as this is on the internet and it's going to go on terrestrial radio in a couple of days, I wish I could have you do the 19th Amendment, the Equal Pay Act, and make your own dinner, but I can't because I think those are three. I love those jokes. I really did. I couldn't. I listened. I had my friend Vicki Rossman, who was an agent for comics, listen to them, and she just died laughing. She just absolutely died laughing, which brings up something that I ask every comic. Are comedians born, or can they learn the mechanics and just go off and make a living?
I feel like it's such a complicated question. I read this book called The Talent Code. Have you ever heard of it?
I think so, yes.
I really liked it. Basically, the thesis of The Talent Code is that very, very, very few people are innately talented. Most people, it takes work. And I think most great comedians will tell you that it takes work. And I do think there is something that needs to be inside you, but I don't necessarily think it means for you to be funny. I think there's actually more a drive and an essence of somebody that will do whatever it takes to be the best version of themselves in whatever art form it is, whether they're a painter or an actor or a comedian or musician or magician, whatever it is. And I think that's more the thing that's more born inside you and a part of you, that whatever it gets pointed towards, the art form or, you know, being an architect or, you know, whatever your thing is, that's the thing that propels you to greatness and pushes you to take whatever your art form is and be the best at it. And so I think you can be a great comedian through work, but the type of work that it is, it's not just getting up on stage, it's not just writing. The type of work, I think, is this grueling ability to look at yourself and be honest that it's not good or it's not original or it's not truly who you are. And there's a lot of people that they get into comedy, they think, well, I just need to be funny. And it gets a laugh and they stop there. But anybody in a lot of ways can make hopefully can make their friends laugh or these other people. But what is it that makes you stand out? What is it that makes you uniquely you? What is it about? What are you truly trying to say? And that digging and really understanding who you are, what you're trying to say, and what is unique about your perspective, I think is what makes great comedians. And I think that's the type of work that someone innately has to have a drive to be able to do that, because it's grueling and it's exhausting and it's often not very rewarding.
No, it's not. It's actually, it can be at times, depending upon if you're traveling on the road. And I had a lot of my friends who traveled on the road a lot back in the day when you did literally drive from one gig to the other. It can be humiliating. I mean, it really, really, really can. When did you realize, yeah, I can make a living at this? It may not be the greatest living. I may not make Amy Schumer money, but I'm doing okay. And, you know, I'm happy with it and I'm happy with myself.
So I've been doing it 14 years. I've been doing it full time. So 6 years. And, you know, the first couple of years, it was like, you know, pasting together money, like $50 gigs here, $200 gigs. Like every month I was like, I might need to get a job. And it was like that for about 3 years. And only in the last 3 years since have I been able to, like, stuff just comes and I make, you know, bigger chunks of money and, you know, I'm headlining more and people know who I am and I'm doing more TV work. And, I mean, I think it was probably 3 years ago that I started to kind of I don't think my drive was never to be famous. My drive was always to be good and to love what I do. And really, I would say in the last 3 years, I have never been happier than what I say on stage and what I'm putting out there and who I've developed as a person because of comedy and because of therapy and what person I represent on stage as well. And so I don't ever see myself being Schumer big or, Carlin big, but I see myself being appreciated by the people that do like me as somebody that would some of the greats that I grew up. And so I never needed to be a Bieber. I've always listened to punk bands and been just as happy. So I would love to be a punk band in people's hearts. I would love to be that album that is a comfort and speaks to them. And just like you going around showing people my bits and my videos online, I get tweets and Facebook messages every single day from people that are newly discovering me and saying, I just saw this. I just showed 3 of my friends. We just bought your album. We're going to come see you in Indiana. Like, I see people really connect with what I'm doing, and that's all I've ever wanted. I've always just wanted to speak to the people that understand what I'm going through and really help them with their experiences, because I spent most of my time helping myself with my own, and it is exhausting and a little lonely.
We're talking to Liz Miele. She's a comedian, writer, producer. You can get to Liz Miele, MIELE.com, and she has a new album out, Emotionally Exhausting. And what you were saying is very true. Everybody that I've ever met in any walk of life, Liz, that's been highly successful has never sought the fame or the fortune. They just wanted to be good at it. It's like when I was in L.A. at the Groundlings, I remember somebody turning to me, and I forget who the person was, and just saying, don't worry about being famous. Just worry about being a good actor. All that other stuff will come later. Let your natural instincts inside of you come forth. And if they're there, they're going to, you're going to find it, because all the fame and fortune means nothing. It can be taken away from you in 5 seconds. But if you're good at your craft, you're working. You're putting food on the table, and I think that's very important.
And there's always going to be ebbs and flows. So even somebody that is as big as, Jim Gaffigan or Louis C.K., it's like, they're not always exactly where you want to be in your career. So if you're not saying the stuff that you want to be saying, you're working a day job. You know what I mean? It's no different. So the only thing that keeps us from not being somebody that works at a desk job and just is there to get a paycheck to pay for their home is through the art of it and through the enjoyment of it. And when you stop enjoying it, it's just like any other job. And so I think I've really kind of been fortunate that even when the business side of all this has been the worst and has really gotten me down, I've always really worked hard at my craft and really been proud of what I say and do on stage.
Yeah, I know Amy Schumer recently gave an interview, and then we're going to talk about your tour recently in Europe. She talked about the fact, she said, hey, I can't keep up this pace much longer. I can't keep upping myself every other day or every other month or every 6 weeks. It's going to come to an end where I'm going to have to pull back and just be Amy again. And, people aren't going to remember me as much 10 years from now. She said, I can't keep this pace up. And, she's making the money now that will take care of those years from now. But, every comedian that I've ever met, even Robin in his heyday, he used to have to take time to, decompress and get away from it all. Leno does the same thing, although Jay's a workaholic. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Jay is really a workaholic. But anybody, you can't keep it up forever. You've got to take and pull back. And there's, as you said, there ebb and flow in everybody's career. You were talking about doing stand-up like in Indiana, and of course you're from the New Jersey area. You work out of New York. How does your stuff play in Indiana or Tennessee or Atlanta as compared to how it plays on either the left or right coast?
I mean, I haven't had too much difference, to be honest. I mean, I think if you're going into a comedy club, you're familiar with comedy. You understand that there's a strong perspective. I think if you're coming to go see a female comic, you are open to women talking. I think I honestly, I mean, it's not always true, but I've been pretty fortunate that most places I do pretty well. I'm pretty, even though I'm very specific about my experiences, my experiences are pretty universal in a lot of ways. And then I also, even if you don't agree or understand what I'm talking about, I explain it well enough and I take you on a journey that I make it an interesting journey. And so, I mean, there's like West Virginia is probably one of the states I do very poorly in. People are like, you know, because I've toured Europe and the Middle East, people are always just like, oh, is it weird to be touring overseas? Is it different? And I go, you know, West Virginia is a foreign country to me. I do way better in Sweden than I do in West Virginia. So there are states that we just don't connect. And I actually haven't even performed in every state. So I mean, we'll see what happens. But I've been fortunate that most of the clubs and most of the theaters that I've done, I've had people that are either coming out specifically for me or they're comedy enthusiasts that understand that, that this is an art form and you're going to have to think a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, you just came back from a tour of Europe. How was that? I mean, besides the fact that you were over there performing, and for people who follow you on Facebook, it seemed like you were having a great time. You were sending out a lot of pictures. You were having a lot of fun. You know, was that your first time touring through Europe extensively, or had you done that before?
So this is my fourth European tour. This was my longest one because it was kind of almost in 3 sections. I did a military tour throughout Cuba, Europe, and the Middle East for a month. And then I was I kind of based myself in London for a month and a half, and I was doing shows all around the UK. I did a festival in Belgium, and then I went to Scotland. I did the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I was based out in Edinburgh for a month. So, I mean, it was the whole trip, all 3 sections of it were incredible, and I got to see the world, and it was paid for by someone else's dime. I got paid to tour and meet new people. Because this is now my 4th time going over there, I actually have a really good friend base in the UK and in London, so I have a lot of comics. I know a lot of non-comics. It's like, to me, it almost felt like being home in New York because the subway system's, you know, similar. The setup, the stand-up scene is similar. It was good. I mean, it was exhausting, and you're still not sleeping in your own bed, and, you know, you don't have the same resources that you do. But I was fortunate that because I was traveling with so many really fun, interesting, cool people, and I have a good support system, and I'm working in a similar fashion than I do when I'm here, that it didn't feel like I was away for 3 months. I mean, the Fringe Festival is really what kind of put me under, and I'm still pretty exhausted from it because that is unlike any tour I've ever done before. But I loved it. I mean, both the touristy side of it, you know, seeing the pyramids in Egypt, and, you know, kanafa is a dessert in Turkey that I'm now obsessed with that I didn't know existed. And, you know, I went to Cuba, which is a place I never thought I would ever go to. And I'm Italian, and I got to perform and eat in Italy for a couple of days and see Rome and Naples, where my family's from, and, you know, eat gelato. And, you know, and then I got to be in London, and, you know, everybody has a nice accent, and you can just fantasize about people. And, you know, and they have a nice dark sense of humor. I was in Sweden. You know, to me, my parents have never left the country. You know, they haven't even been to Canada, and here I am, a girl that didn't even think being a full-time stand-up was a thing that could happen, and I never thought I would go to Europe and be paid to perform. That it all just feels like bonus points and bonus experiences.
Have you ever been to where my people are from, Greece?
I haven't, but I've read so much about it, and I really want to go. And I feel like the Italians and the Greeks are very similar. We look similar. We have similar foods. You know, I really would like to go. Yeah,
it's interesting. A lot of I wasn't raised by Greek parents. I'm an adopted child, but I've been over there many times. I was very fortunate. My father was an airline pilot, so I got to travel from a very young age to see the world. And of course, in the Air Force, I traveled like crazy because I was aboard Air Force One for about 2.5 years with Nixon. So I got to travel with him. And Greece is beautiful, but my favorite country is Austria. I just love the mountains and the lakes, and the people are real friendly and really cool. How does the humor play over there from one country to the next? Do you have to sort of, now this is your 4th time, but the first time that you went over there, how did you manage to manage your jokes from one country to the next? Because what means something here doesn't mean something over there. How did that play?
Well, I mean, as an American touring Europe, I think you're really fortunate because so much American television and movies is absorbed over there. So the New York accent, so especially being from New York, LA, America, they're familiar with it. So already your accent and the phrases you say aren't really that foreign to them.
Mm-hmm.
And, everything because of the internet and brands is very universal. I mean, I had a joke where I said the word Snickers, and you can find a Snickers in any country at any time. So there's some stuff that, this isn't the 50s. I mean, the internet and movies and TV has made everything really universal. So I don't actually have to change that much. And I didn't really have, because my jokes aren't about New Jersey or, about even specifically America. My jokes are about me and my human experience and my life. I really don't have to change much. Like I can say, even though they don't have high school, they've seen all the movies, they know what high school is. I think in my new hour that I did over there, I think the only things I changed, instead of public school, I would say state school, because public school actually means it was like a good private school. And state school is so if I was putting my education down as like, oh, it was a public school, I had to say state school, because otherwise that was confusing to them. But, or like, I would say primary school instead of elementary school. There's little things like that, but for the most part, I don't really change much. In all countries, I haven't really had a problem. They all speak, I mean, especially like the Scandinavian countries, they speak better English than we do.
Yeah.
They're all smarter than us. So
and have you noticed how clean their countries are?
Oh, so clean. So clean. They're just like these tall, beautiful, thoughtful, kind, put together, financially stable people. And they're just like, if you weren't such a good audience, I would not like you guys.
Yeah.
But they're so fun. Like they're so good.
Yeah. Of course, I live in Orlando, and I ran into somebody the other day who was a tourist in I can't remember where. It was either Denmark or Sweden or someplace, and he stopped me because I was talking to someone. He says, in his best the English that he could muster, he said, "Could you please tell me and explain to me what the hell is a Donald Trump?" I said, "I don't have enough time in my life."
Yeah.
I don't have enough time. Hey, you're going to be performing tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 in Hampton, New Jersey. I also want to go over this.
That got canceled.
Oh, it got canceled. All right, we're going to take that one out there. How about on the 23rd? You're going to be at the Woodstock, the Bearsville Theater, the Woodstock Comedy Festival on the 23rd.
I will be there.
Okay, and on the 24th, you're in Long Island at the Standing Room. You have a show at 8 and 10 p.m. And on the 25th in New York City at 10 p.m., the New York Comedy Club, just to mention a few. So if you're out there, check Liz out. We're talking to Liz Miele. She's Miele, excuse me. I say Merle. Miele. She's a fabulous comedian. She's a writer and producer. You took a chance when you first got started. I love this. I got to meet a lot of different comedians and stuff. It's like when I was a little boy, I got to meet Frank, Sammy, and Dean when I was very little because they were performing at the Fontainebleau, and, of course, my uncle knew them. But you took a chance and wrote to a lot of comics about advice. And the one person that got back to you, and I'm not surprised because he really was a great guy, was George Carlin. Talk about that and your relationship you had with him, because you stayed in contact with him until a few weeks before he passed.
Yeah, so my dad actually gave me the advice because he knew how much I love stand-up, that he goes, if you want to be where other people are, you should do what they do, and the best way to find out is to ask them. So I spent months, this is really before all this stuff was really accessible, but I spent months like scouring the internet, looking for addresses, looking for email addresses, anything that could get me close so that I could just email. And I didn't ask for anything. All I said is like, hey, I'm 15. I love stand-up. I think you're amazing. I want to do this. How do I do it? Like, you know what I mean? Just asking a couple of questions. And only 2 people got back to me. Judd Apatow got back to me, emailed me. And this is post Freaks and Geeks, but pre like Judd Apatow producing and being on everything.
Right.
So he was, he emailed me, told me to stay in school, and was, very nice, and I still have the email printed somewhere. And then George Carlin actually, he called me because my dad told me to write my email or write my letter like a business letter. So it had my address, it had my phone number, it had my email address, and all I found was an address for him. So I just mailed him a business letter. And so he called me probably like maybe 2 weeks after I sent it, and gave me this site, gave me all this advice about writing and getting up on stage, and told me I could mail him anytime I had a question. And unpromptedly, a week later, a signed headshot. I have it. It's on my desk right now. There's a signed headshot from George Carlin that just says "Go do it," because I hadn't done stand up yet. And I would keep him in the loop every 3 to 6 months. I would tell him where I was, and he sent me free tickets for me and my friends to go see him live in New Brunswick when I was still living in New Jersey. He sent me a signed copy of his book when his new book came out 2 years later.
Was that brain droppings?
I think no, it was the one. There was something about like him at the dinner table and he has food in his hand. It's like a chopstick.
Oh yeah.
Pork chops, something pork chops.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it was that one. So so I signed a free copy of that. I had lunch with him and picked his brain about like more detailed stuff when I was 19. He called me a few other times whenever I wrote to him. He gave me his email address, and so I would just keep him in the loop. I was written up in the New Yorker when I was 18. I sent him a copy. He called me to tell me thank you, and that he enjoyed it, and he learned from it because it was like it was a new perspective of how young comedians got started. And and then I actually emailed him to let him know that I was going to be on Comedy Central the next week, and he emailed me back saying that, you know, he's going to check it out, and then he died 2 days later.
Yeah. Everybody loved him. I mean, he was a hero, I think, to everybody in my generation. Richard Pryor. I mean, I never got to meet Richard. I got to meet his children over the years, but you know, George was just something else. Tell me something about yourself, Liz, that you have learned about Liz Miele and the difference in you now as compared to when you got started. And I don't mean just professionally. I mean you as the person, the human being.
It's weird. There's so much. I mean, I feel like I've grown a lot just in the last year, let alone in the last 14. But I like myself. That's something I didn't know I didn't like myself. Had no idea that was a huge motivation. But even just the difference in my new hour that's pretty much done and the hour that I have on an album, it's a lot of self-deprecating humor about why I am where I am. And this new hour is a lot about why I am where I am because I like myself. And that's been the strangest thing to find out. I mean, it's almost sad. It's almost like when you find out a friend doesn't like their body or thinks they're stupid. And these people that you love, you find out that they don't love themselves the way you love them. And it was a real eye-opening experience to find out that I did not like myself and that a lot of the things I did was because it was motivated by that. And then to now be 31 and, you know, I still have a lot of emotional growth to go, but there's so many things about myself that I genuinely can now see from a friend perspective and see why I have the friends I do and see why audiences enjoy what I say and how I say it, that I can look at myself and feel confident in a way that I never felt before, to the point where I really wish I could nurture and sit 16-year-old Liz down and tell her it's going to kind of be okay. Like that really cheesy, like, you know, there was a lot of stuff I worried about and beat myself up about. And I really wish I could have been a friend to myself when I was a teenager and in my 20s, because I was just really not nice to myself and really lost. And I feel much calmer and better now than I ever have.
Do you think your vulnerability is also important on stage as well as in your personal life?
Absolutely. I mean, if anything, I've learned to be vulnerable on stage, and I'm trying to peel that back and be more vulnerable off stage, because there's still a protection. That vulnerability on stage is protected by humor, and vulnerability off stage doesn't always have that protection. And I am very sensitive and very emotional, and that layer and that part of me is something I've always worried about people seeing. And as I've become nicer to myself and connect more with people, I've started to be less insecure about people seeing this side of me that might not always be shiny and happy and humorous.
Yeah, I think I think sometimes we mistake how we're supposed to live by our examples on TV that always appear to be happy and content, and they have all the money in the world, and that isn't real life. What's next for Liz, and where do you want to go from here? I mean, what are the things that are on your bucket list, even though you're too young to even think about that? But, what does Liz Miele want to do with her career? Where does she want to go?
I would love to be like a Tina Fey like person. I want to write and produce my own stuff. I do it on a baby level. I mean, I have a couple web series that I've written and produced. I have a pilot that I think I'm going to try to turn into a short film. But I want to both write for myself and other people and help myself and help other funny people I know that need to have their voice and creativity put out there. And I just want to be an asset to others. And so I think a part of me is just looking to get on TV more and to tour more and continue to produce. Like, I'm trying to turn this new hour into a special, which I would love. Just continue to expand my fan base and to continue to expand the different ways I push my creative ideas out. So I have some web series, I have my stand-up, but I would love to do some bigger stuff, like, have one of my movies made or have one of my pilots made.
We're talking to Liz Miele. If you want to find out more about her, go to Liz Miele, MIELE.com. You can check out her album, Emotionally Exhausting, as well as other parts of her career. You can also find out where she's going to be performing. We've got just a couple of minutes left, Liz, and this hour has gone by quickly. And I'm so grateful that you took time to come on this show, because I love you. I really do. I think you're fabulous. What advice do you give to young people out there that look to you now? I mean, at 31, the old lady. What advice do the young people come to you and say, well, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? And skill sets. What's the most important skill set you need to be a good working comic?
It's weird. It's something I'm still learning, like flexibility. This idea that I'm very much a control freak and was built with a scarcity that, money might not be coming and you always have to protect yourself and be ready. And it's hard with something like comedy where you have a different, you make different money week to week, you make different money month to month, I make different money year to year. Yeah. This flexibility with how the crowd is reacting to you, how the industry is reacting to you, how life is reacting to you, and to kind of go with the flow a little bit. And I always say the key to good stand-up comedy is a unique and strong perspective. And so whenever somebody is just like, I'm trying to make this joke funny, how do I make this funny? You're already barking up the wrong tree. I think really every good joke comes from, what is my perspective? What is weird about this? What is interesting about this? What about this makes me angry? What about this makes me sad? This strong feeling, and then following the feeling, and then figuring out why the feeling is even there in the first place. And I think the more you dig, the more you find out about yourself, and the more you find out about yourself, the more you understand your perspective, and the more you understand your perspective, the more you'll find what kind of draws people to you and what's funny about it. And I think I always say embrace the complexity of things rather than the simplicity.
Yeah, and I think perseverance is probably extremely important.
Absolutely.
I mean, because this business will eat you up and spit you out and not even care. I mean, it's not even show business, life in general. You just got to be tough, and if you don't have a thick skin, you need to not go into show business. And the best advice I ever got, which was, if there's something else in this world you'd like to do besides show business, whatever you want to do in it, go do that. Because if you don't have 100% of yourself into your career, whatever that may be, then you're wasting your time, you're wasting your breath. And that was the best advice. And that came from my uncle, as well as an actor who I really, really I loved the guy. He was really great to me when I got to L.A. And, of course, Robin was also instrumental to me in getting with the Groundlings in general. We've been talking to Liz Miele. The hour has gone by. Please check her out at lizmiele.com. She is a wonderful comedian. She is a writer. She is a producer. She is just an all-around great lady. And go check her out if she's going to be in your neighborhood. Go to lizmiele.com. Find out where she's performing. Go there. Go on her website. Liz, thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us here on The Express. And I look forward to having you back real soon.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome, young lady. And I just want to say to everybody, check me out on Facebook at Gary Allen, Alan. You can also go on youtube.com, Gary Allen, The Express Interviews. The show will be up in just a couple of days. Thursday night, the show repeats itself at 7 p.m. on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com, as well as on progressivevoices.com. And if you're into tunein.com and you have TMV Cafe in there as your favorites, just go in there and you can listen to this show and any of the others. So I just want to say, as I said at the top of the hour, this is the last show for a couple of weeks until after I get through with my move. And then we'll be live until the end of the year and into next year with some great guests and some great shows. Liz will be coming back and joining us from time to time, I'm sure. But until then, would you please do me a favor? And thank you all for being with us tonight. And Randy, thank you for listening in. Would you please take care of yourselves and each other?
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.